establish partnerships in order to conduct their business. Then there is also a structure, sole proprietorship. And sole proprietorship is an easy structure coming out. Certainly, again, there are tax ramifications that you have to take into consideration to report on your business entity. But again, I think those are things you discuss with your accountant, your CPA, to make sure that you understand, what the tax ramifications are for each of the structures that you decide to do, and then go forward with establishing a legal structure. Beyond the legal structure, I think one of the things that a lot of people are very excited to do, but they don't take into consideration, is checking the name and your name availability. As you want to establish yourself, probably in Florida or any other state, there are requirements that you have to check with the licensing bureau to see if that name is in use, or if a similar name is in use. Similar in your product. When you decide you have a product now that's developed and you want to go out and now patent this product, you will have to do a very formal process of checking to determine whether or not that name is in use and whether or not you can properly utilize it. And then preparing the organizational documents. A lot of businesses, they want to be very ready to go out and start doing business. But I think it's important to, one, make sure that your organizational documents are filed, that they are in order. And when I say organizational documents, I mean things like your article of incorporation. That has to be filed with the state that you're doing business in, if you're a corporation, or your certificate of organization for a partnership or an LLC. And then establishing partnership agreements. Many times you may want to collaborate on your legal structure and go into business with a number of people. I think it's important, of course, to establish very solid partnership agreements and make sure that the agreements spell out in very great detail what each partner is responsible for, who's coming in. And I'll talk a bit about this in a moment, but partnership agreements are something I see, a lot of businesses launch with multiple people and they don't have partnership agreements in place. And then obtaining things like your EIN, which is your employer number from the IRS. It's very similar to your Social Security number. If you're an individual and you're operating under sole proprietorship, you may want to file taxes under your Social Security number and account for the business in that manner. But in other structures, again, such as the corporate, such as partnerships, such as the LLC and LLPs, you will need to get an EIN number from the IRS and file, the regulatory forms, the I-9 and your W-4. So, again, the first thing I say is the legal structure and organization. So moving beyond that, what do we look at when you talk about licensing and registration? So licensing, you really have to understand the states in which you want to perform business in. Are there qualifications that are necessary for you to conduct business in that particular state? And that involves a certain amount of research that's necessary. They have requirements, for example, a money service business. If you wanted to open a money service business in Florida, you would need to adhere to a number of requirements related to registering your business, making sure your directors have certain experiences, making sure you do the appropriate background checks, making sure you have the appropriate licenses. So it does take some time to understand what the registration requirements are based in your particular area. and also based in the state that you choose to incorporate or do business in. And then it's a matter of registering your business with the particular state agencies. Again, financial agencies, you would go to places such as the Department of Financial Services. More local agencies have oversight and authority over businesses that, such as myself, who do advisory work, who do legal work, who offer products and services. And that allows them to come in and certainly do examinations of your business. It allows them to come in and look at your things like your books and records. And it allows them to also penalize you if you're not adhering to the state requirements. So it's important to, one, make sure that you're licensed in the state that you're doing business in, and two, make sure that you're adhering to the registration requirements for your particular type of business. Another thing I see a lot of people get caught up on is what are the permitted activities of your business. And while, as a fintech or startup, it really depends on what product you're bringing out, what permitted activities are. Many of the fintechs that I work with are currently partnering with banking institutions and bringing out associated products that are also offered to bank consumers. So you can imagine when you're dealing with certain consumers, you have to adhere again to certain requirements. Not everything is permitted. Not all products are permitted. And many times you have to disclose certain things to consumers before you can offer a product. So it's important, again, to understand what are the permitted and prohibited activities for your particular business. And I think one of the things I often caution people to do is, again, put many of these activities and prohibitions into an operating agreement for the organization. And what the operating agreement does is it not only talks about who the management is, who your directors are, who, the purpose of the company and where your principal office is, but it also talks about what the operations of the business are going to be, what's permitted for the business to conduct and what's prohibited, so that there's no graying of the actual lines. And any regulator that comes in to look at your business, they can clearly see that you have listed, here are the permissible activities, because when they see permissible activities listed, they expect that you're going to have, one, books and records around all of those permissible activities, and two, policies that sort of dictate how you're going to go about conducting yourself in that arena. A couple of other things that are in operating agreement is you want to talk about how you treat your profit, your losses, and your accounting. It's very important, one, because and you can certainly talk through this with your accountant, one of the things you have to do in establishing your corporation is determine what cycle you're on. Some institutions may be on an annual cycle that ends in December. Other institutions may be on an annual cycle that ends at the end of March. So you have to clearly define that, because when the IRS or any other regulator comes knocking at your door, it's important for them to see in your operating agreement what your financial status is and what your filing status is when you account for a year in your company. And then again, things like, it's important to set up, again, things, important policies such as your code of ethics and code of business conduct, how your employees or even yourself, many sole proprietors think that they don't need to be governed by any particular document. But what it does is it keeps you disciplined and it keeps you accountable Once you have that written into your operating agreement and you've established policies around that, such as a code of ethics and code of business, it keeps you accountable so that anyone now coming in, looking at your business, looking at your processes, they can clearly see what you have dictated for the business as permissible and prohibited, and whether you're adhering to that. And, compliance risk is a real risk. Are you even adhering not only to what the state has dictated for you, but are you adhering to your own policies that you set in place for yourself? So it's important to have a very solid governance structure, which includes policies. And the first policy you should really look at is establishing things like a code of conduct or a code of business. And also a conflict and fraud prevention policy. Many times we are hiring. You get to a point where you start hiring individuals to come in. And it's very necessary to sort of start drafting agreements for employees, one, whether they be due diligence, depending on, the information you're collecting. You may have to perform a certain level of due diligence on employees that are coming into your organization. And two, you want to prevent things like employees walking out of your company with your actual assets, which is your intellectual property, your business secrets. So you set these policies in place so that if in fact this happens, you have a recourse, whether it's just monetary or whether it's criminal. You're not going to have a leg to stand on if you hadn't developed agreements and policies that really dictate and prohibited, certain levels of fraud in your organization. So again, I think that's an important program to develop, and certainly to have as one of the first sort of policies for your organization. And then simple operating and management policies, and procedures. How is something done? And you do that to enable your employees to operate in a very uniform fashion. It's important, again, for organizations to operate uniformly to enable anyone coming in, the government or whomever, to look at your processes and say, are you adhering to your own processes and procedures? And you, as business owners, will be able to check on your employees to understand, are they following the procedures that I've laid out for them? So operating and management policies and procedures are, again, important things to consider. And as you're going forward setting up, certainly in addition to the operating agreement, getting these policies in place is certainly first and foremost. So again, some of the legal considerations I mentioned, not only, well, this goes without saying, but you're setting up your business to engage in lawful acts and business activities as required under the state. So you're not setting up a business to engage in illegal or fraudulent activity. That's a quick way to get shut down and get criminally prosecuted. So always make that clear in all of your operating documents that the business is engaged in lawful acts and business activities and follows the laws of the state or jurisdiction that you are licensed in. Then your corporate governance framework. Those are some of the things I mentioned, such as your management setup, who does what, looking again at your operating agreement and making sure you've detailed what your management, your senior management, your directors are going to do, what employees are responsible for. And again, things like dissolution, accounting, profit and loss statements, all of those things make a totality of your corporate governance framework. The policies that I mentioned, the code of ethics, the fraud, and also your operating policies are necessary things. And then looking at things like your legal risk. what types of risk are you taking on based on your product? And do you need certain types of agreements? One of the, very frequently I say, as you're starting to introduce your products to others, and as you're starting to show your product, I think one of the things people forget to do is to obtain a non-disclosure agreement. And, whether you go online to try to find one online, or contact an attorney, or try to formulate one yourself, not recommended, by the way. A non-disclosure agreement is probably one of the first agreements you're going to actually have to draft to give to the people that you're dealing with. Why do we say that? One, because you don't want anyone disclosing the deal that you're working on. And it's important that both sides are of the same mindset, that you're going to keep the information that you're discussing confidential. Because one, your product, again, is your intellectual property. You've worked very hard to get it to the stage, and showing it to someone who then goes and in conversation is talking to someone else about your product is something that you may or may not ever know until down the line you see your product develop somewhere else. So it's important, even simple conversations with attorneys or whomever, where you want to show your product, please do get a non-disclosure agreement. The other thing I say to young businesses and startups is to obtain service level agreements. A service level agreement is necessary for anyone working on your product also, right? Because they're providing a certain level of service, whether it be you're just hiring someone to do business requirements, or you're just hiring a Scrum, a third-party Scrum or a third-party developer. All of those people that you hire, you should develop and have with them a service level agreement that really defines for you what service is being provided, the expectations for timing, the expectations for payment, and what to do if there is not a meeting of the minds once the product is delivered. So it's important to get those service level agreements. The other thing I work on very frequently is setting up the business online. Many of our businesses now are online, very few are in person. But whether in person or not, there are certain key things that you have to disclose, right? So you have a website, there's a number of key disclosures that come along with your website. You're collecting consumer information, there are a number of privacy disclosures that you have to make, including, offering of certain services online. You have to ensure information security for anyone coming in and utilizing your product, or for anyone utilizing your website. There are confidentiality agreements that also apply to, again, the employees, any third-party vendors that you're using, and any third-party consultants that may come in just for project basis. So again, I think, it's hard to qualify what exact disclosures are necessary unless you know what the business is. So it's important to speak again to legal counsel to understand, so that you're very clear on what's necessary and what disclosures are necessary to offer your product to consumers. And the last thing I'll say before I take any questions is the importance of establishing books and records. A lot of young companies get into a lot of trouble because they don't maintain appropriate books and records. And this goes back to, again, the licensing and registration that I talked to earlier. in the state requirements, the state, whichever state or jurisdiction that you're going to be licensed in, will state very clearly what books and what records you have to maintain and how they have to be maintained, whether physically, whether they're going to now be scanned and maintained on your computer and you have a backup, or you're going to have old school file cabinets that you're putting these documents in. Again, not recommended. It's necessary because organizations have the responsibility to maintain accurate, timely, and complete books and records to allow, again, if the IRS wants to come in, and they very well may come knocking at your door one day, if the regulators want to come in, or any other state agency that decides to come in and start looking at your business, those records have to be there. If they're not there, they're going to cite you for violations and penalize you. And they have authority to do so. And books and records, again, should not be open to all employees, all managers, all directors, and all shareholders, right? Books and records have to be offered on a need-to-know basis. So make sure, again, as you're drafting these operating agreements on how you're going to operate, put the books and records in. What books are going to be maintained by whom, and who's going to have access to these books? Because it's important, particularly as we go through, some of the cybersecurity kind of initiatives, it's important that not everyone has access to your systems for books and records. And again, the storage and destruction. Many of the state requirements require that you keep books and records only for a certain amount of time. So it's not forever. And I say that because forever can get you in a lot of trouble. So if a state requirement says 5 to 7 years, make sure that you destroy those records after the 7-year period, because here comes a litigator, 10 years down the line asking for books and records that are already expired and should have been destroyed. Are they discoverable if you have them? Yes. And do you have to turn those books and records over? Yes. So it's best to follow, a record retention schedule and destroy your books and records on time. And the last thing I'll say is always, contact an attorney or a legal advisor as you go forward with establishing your business, to make sure, one, that your strategy is adhering to laws and regulations, to make sure that you understand very clearly the business requirements for that particular state, for licensing and registration, and to understand what documents you need to actually launch, because every business is different. So it's not a one size fit all. And it really does take an evaluation of the actual product and service to understand what's required before launching. So I'll take your questions now, if you have any.
So there were a few questions in the chat. The first one was from Lisa. What makes a sole proprietorship different from remaining an individual or 1099 independent contractor using a DBA?
Well, a 1099 is a bit different, and not different. A sole proprietorship does not require any kind of licensing. So if you want to establish a sole proprietorship, it doesn't require you to file any documentation. The basis of the sole proprietorship is at the end of the year or the end of the period, how are you going to account for the work that you did on your taxes? And that is, it's not you don't have a pass-through organization to pass that through. So even with a 1099, if you're working independently as a contractor and they've given you a 1099, you're accounting for that in your own personal taxes and not through a business entity. So a sole proprietorship utilizes, again, the 1099s, but it can also, there are different forms based on what you're actually doing, but it can also, just file individually.
Can I add on to that question? So what are some of the stipulations of going that route in terms of protecting your personal assets?
It's not a recommended structure once you have established, again, your business at a certain level. You know, a lot of people do it to start as they're looking for funding. They may not establish their business structure, but they still want to operate, and they're still starting to put out the product, make some money off of the product. So all of that money has to be accounted for some way. So it's accounted for in their own personal taxes. And of course, as the taxes increase, and I'm not a tax lawyer, so I'm not going to pretend to even, know about the different tax benefits of it. But, as your income increases, your tax bracket also changes, right? And so you want to be very careful with that. Also, in terms of your own personal assets, of course, someone can sue you and seek damages if something happens and they have a cause of action, and they can come after your own personal assets. If there were a legal structure involved, certainly the buck stops at the legal structure, because you're operating under a legal structure instead of operating under Wanda Eugene. So your personal assets don't get affiliated with your legal structure. It is only the assets of the company that they can actually seek to recover.
All right.
And same with limited liability companies and limited liability partnerships. While some of that is passed through taxes, because as a shareholder in some of these structures, you are getting a certain amount of dividend at the end of the year, a certain amount of payments. You can account for that in a couple of different ways. And again, one of the things you have to make sure you set up in your organizational structure is how you're going to account for profit to the partners and the shareholders, and then how you're going to account for the losses.
Okay. And I'm going to let some of them ask their questions. Chris, you had a question? I'll let you kind of ask your own question.
Is it if we hire a company to run our business as a third party, who signs the service level agreement to run the business as a third party? I'm not sure I understand. Are you saying they are managing the company for you, or are they serving as a vendor providing a certain level of service? Well, I'll answer two ways. So when you get a service level agreement, if you're hiring a third party vendor, right? So a third party vendor comes in and it's on a project basis, or they're taking over a whole piece of the business, such as your accounting. So you say in your business, I don't want to do any accounting. I am going to give to firm A all of my accounting work to do. They will file all of the reports. They will do all of my financial statements. The person who owns that company A is actually going to be signing, or whoever their authorized signers are. Many of them, they give a certain level of signage to various members, various directors in the organization. So always make sure the person who's signing the service level agreement has the authority to do that. And so you put that phrase into the service level agreement that you confirm that you have authority to sign this agreement and to enter into these services on behalf of this company. So that's how, that's how you protect yourself if someone in fact signs a particular document and they weren't an authorized signer for the company.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that was pretty much my question, because I was trying to hire a team to run my system, and I just wanted to know who was the one that signed it, my service level agreement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just make sure again that language is in there. That language is in there.
Okay, thank you.
All righty, and Lisa had one more question. Lisa, do you want to ask your second question?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm hands-on. I go into people's homes, and although I do have like a personal agreement, it used to be a coaching agreement, but I've kind of merged it with a personal services agreement. No one ever asks me for it. I think I've had one person sign one. And I know as I get bigger, so how important is that? I guess my question is kind of two-part. How important is it to get that signed before working? And then you kind of touched on this before, but like with liability, like, so if I were to say a sole proprietor, I think because I did request an EIN, I got that. So then some people have said, I called my insurance company for my homeowners and they said, you shouldn't need anything. I mean, they don't know, but for the insurance piece, they said any homeowner will cover if someone's injured in your home. So is that something I would need another layer of personal insurance?
Yeah, I think that goes to Wanda's sort of supplemental comments to if you're operating as a sole proprietor. Because and just correct me if I'm wrong. Did you say people are coming into your home or are you going into their home?
I go into theirs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think one of the things you have to make sure is in your hiring, you define what your scope of service is and what they're liable for if anything happens to you, and what you're liable for if anything happens in their home. And that's important because again, you just never know what can take place. We had an incident where a company sends nurses to the homes to facilitate the activities of the occupants, and one of the occupants fell as they were being assisted. And had that not been in the agreement, that the company would not be responsible for things like that, the company would have been responsible, right? So I think it's up to you to really make sure that every time you're getting that signed at the beginning, if you want to extend the contract, indefinitely, then put that in the contract. These provisions will be in effect unless written notification is given or something to that effect, because you want to be protected on your side, and you also want to make sure that if anything happens while you're servicing the occupant, that you're also protected. And the indemnification provisions of your contract should really speak to that. And the other thing I want to say about insurance, yes, home insurance does cover some things, but if you're operating a business in your home, or if you're going to someone's home and you have agreed to come in to do a certain service, you have to have your own insurance to cover you in many of those events. Why? Because that homeowner can now say, well, we only hired Lisa to come in to do 1, 2, and 3 project. And she agreed that she's a business and she's coming in, she represented that she had her own liability insurances. So we're not covering Lisa if anything happens to her.
Okay, I think that's a big one thing came up of if I were to say fall off a ladder. So things
Yeah,
like that versus if I were to break something in the home. So I could see where I want both. I want coverage on my end, and if I fell off a ladder or something at their end. Yeah,
right.
thank you.
I mean, if it's something that they're, that's, it's a negligent condition of theirs, you want to be covered in that event, right? You don't want to be responsible for going in and there's, a floor loose and then you fall through the floor or something and, and you're injured in that manner. So if there's negligence, certainly they are responsible, but you want to make sure, again, you put all of that into the agreement. And check out, business insurance, not just homeowners, because when you're operating your own business, whether sole proprietorship or any of the other structures, you should look into liability insurance, not just for you, but for the customers that you're providing services to.
And sometimes that's required, especially if you are getting certified to do business with the government. Some of the contracts require that you have business insurance, or even just certain vendors. Also, I believe like some of the state or university or any kind of government vendors, they normally require that you have some kind of business insurance.
Yeah, and they set the amount actually too. So some may say, if you're dealing with the government, it may be $1 million policy, nothing less than that, or, so I think, there are a lot of companies out here, many of the insurance companies also provide business insurance. And the good thing about the pandemic and working from home is now it's expansive, right? There's so many offerings of it that you can get something very reasonable, but it is necessary.
So we're almost out of time, and I do want to ask a question on just kind of a highlight takeaway of, most of our entrepreneurs are starting businesses, tech businesses, some of them are expanding their businesses. And so for the ones kind of coming out, what would you say kind of in a highlight bullet list, what are the steps, the first steps? So for the ones, that are starting the business, what would you say the top 3 things legally they need to do for their businesses? And for the ones that are expanding, because we know sometimes even with our existing businesses, we start and run businesses, but we might not have our legal house in order. So what are some things, the checklist there was like, hey, these are things you should be paying attention to and make sure that they're set for your business.
Yeah, I think, the checklist is starting out is one, particularly if you're launching and you have employees, there are a number of obligations that you really just have to put in place when you're hiring employees and when you're offering products. So looking at, what's required to hire employees and registering not only your licenses, but, with the Department of Labor, with the Department of State, all of those things come into place. So I think registration and licensing is something that they really have to pay attention to. And, within that, I would say understanding the qualifications for each state, like Lisa just mentioned, is liability insurance required? Well, for some licenses and some products, in order to offer it in some spaces, you definitely have to understand that that's a qualification. You have to have liability insurance of a certain amount for certain businesses. So, understanding that is very important. And then beyond just the registration and licensing is setting up your house, right? Setting up your house with the proper agreements, setting up your house with the proper disclosures so that you can operate effectively and have your books and records in order.
Awesome. So one of the things I want to say as we wrap up is we work with Celeste and her team to provide some of those services for you guys. So if you want to book one-on-ones with her and to kind of get a overhaul of what you need and some of those basic documents, that is something that we will cover up into, and I can't remember, I have to look at the agreement, how many hours of services we provide for each of you. And so that is something that is available, and we'll have her email and stuff available that you can kind of book those times with her accordingly. Any parting words, Celeste, before we send you off?
No, I would just say good luck. Please do, this is a great service that is being offered, and to get you on the right track, I think, there has to be really an evaluation one-on-one on what you're doing and how to really set your legal strategy in place. So please do utilize the service and reach out to not only me, but your other legal professionals. It's necessary.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
And good luck.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All righty. All right. So hopefully you guys got some questions in and got some utility out of it. And I know it's sometimes with these sessions, it's like drinking from a fire hydrant, especially because if you're not there yet, but you want to kind of store this in your mental bank as you start working through these, even if you're still kind of figuring out some of the nuts and bolts. I think it's good to have a session with her to kind of say, hey, here's kind of, what I'm doing with my business. And she can kind of help you identify some of the pieces, especially between your operating documents and various agreements, licenses, et cetera, that you want to have in place. So you want to go ahead and get those things in early, because too often we start our businesses and we meet up with these great opportunities, but we're not in a position to take advantage of those opportunities because we haven't done our due diligence. And even how we incorporate our businesses, and we didn't get a chance to go into those kind of details, but I've seen companies incorporate their business, and when various opportunities come up, their incorporation did not really give them the bandwidth to do some of the things they wanted to do with their businesses later on. And even other things in terms of your legal framings, right? There's things we do at the beginning that are missteps that can wreak havoc on us and our ability to grow our businesses. So having the right start and the right foundation is one less thing you have to worry about, and gives you the ability to kind of manage the growth structure of your business that you have in mind. So thank you again, Celeste, for that. All right, so what we're going to move into is our next speaker. Unless you guys have any additional questions for me, I'm going to admit to the room our next speaker. All righty. So our next speaker will be joining us in a second, and you guys might remember her. She was actually part of your cohort at the very beginning. It's really interesting because when Nadine joined the cohort, she had been a speaker for me for about, I think, 2 or 3 cohorts. And she was like, being part of this group has given me, she had an idea and she wanted to kind of, have an opportunity to flesh out her idea, kind of working through it. So she started with us, and then, tax season hit and life got busy, but she's still always someone that we tend to tap into, because one of the things that goes hand in hand with the legalities of starting your business is accounting. And that is where we see a lot of businesses, death by accounting in terms of startups, right? And a lot of businesses don't go under because of bad ideas. A lot of businesses, besides building something that nobody wants, which is why we spend so much time on design thinking, go under because of financials. Bad financial missteps can wreak havoc on some of the best businesses. And I can kind of go for days on examples on that. But I wanted to give a chance to have Nadine on, and she talked about some of the things when we were in session, but it's just kind of the same thing that Celeste did, just kind of some bullet points. Here's some things to pay attention to as you're starting your business, right? And some practical steps that you should be taking and paying attention and enacting, so that it's easier to build upon. Even if you're just a one-person show, there's some little things that you can do to kind of help you grow. So Nadine, are you ready for us?
Yeah, I am. The only problem I have, it says Zoom is unable to detect my camera. I don't know.
Oh.
But I guess I can speak, and then I don't know why I can't detect my camera. Is that weird?
That is weird.
Yeah, I can. let me try to do something really quick, and then let's see if it's because, I don't know if it's because of firewall. I'm actually using my, hold on one second, guys.
Okay, well, she gets
I
that
don't know
figured out.
why.
Did you guys have any questions? Or what were your thoughts on the legal, on our talk with Attorney Mitchell?
I'm glad you asked the question at the end about kind of where to start, because that's been, I guess what's tricky for me to understand is what's necessary and where I should be putting, time and effort versus what's like a nice to have as things progress. So when she was talking about like books and records, thinking, how detailed do we get in the beginning when so much can be changing? And just thinking of like the lean startup framework with that. So it's just something to think about.
Yeah, I would say, your basic stuff, right? So you
Mhm.
incorporate with the state, right? You get your EIN number, you get those type of things to make you legit. And then the other things you have to think about, and that's what she said, it really just depends upon your structure, right? Are you a one-person show? Do you have partners? One of the things, for example, for people, I've seen a lot of people who are bringing on partners or friends or family, is they have kind of a handshake agreement of who's going to do what. But, and that's one of the things, even though you guys are good, it's always that saying, everybody is good with the agreements until the money starts flowing. And so the time that we're good is the time you want to get all the documents in place, right? Who owns what of this company? If somebody exits, what's the dissolution clause? Wait,
Dissolution.
Thank you.
Okay.
Having all those things laid out, and even if it's just by yourself, if something happens to you, what happens to your business, right? Getting that stuff written out, even though it's a pain in the butt at the very beginning, is a game changer when life happens and no one's prepared for it, right? Or even on a good side, as your business grows, right? Like those are the things you want to make sure you are outlining and, as early as possible. And even though like they come off as kind of nice to have, having those things written out early on will save you a lot of heartache and legal trouble later down the line. And that's for starting any kind of a business, right? Like just really laying out what your company is, who it belongs to in increments and pieces or divisions and percentages or however you want to do. All those things are very important. Marnisha says, will there be a template for disclosures, operating procedures? Not necessarily a template, but you can work with her where she will create a template that makes sense for your business. So all those type of things. And so I will say the biggest thing is kind of the things that make you legal and the things that define you like moving forward are kind of your starting off. And then the other stuff you can add on because there's just other little things that you don't realize. Like one thing my attorney nicked me for was I would sign documents for my company, but like, you know how you like type your name and then sign on top of it? Well, she was like, if I didn't write like, me in terms of representing my my company, then I was liable. So I had to always write my name and the name, like my name, my title of my company and the company name. Therefore, it wasn't that I'm signing this document on behalf of Wanda. I'm signing this document on Wanda, managing director of Deep Designs, right? And that was something I had to do across all documents, which I didn't think was a big deal. But every time I signed it differently, it had a different representation, which had different legal parameters. Things that I had no clue or didn't even realize was that important, but that can be game, like those little small nuances can create legal havoc if something were to happen. So so those are the things that you kind of want to be able to pay attention to. And some of them are things that we'll never encounter and no one's ever coming after you for your business, but it's one of those, it's just like insurance, like for anything else, right? Is you want to have it and not need it, then need it and not have it, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely. I found out why I couldn't open, with tech, everybody. I am now mostly working remote since the pandemic. So I didn't realize I was behind. I was on one of my servers. So it locks you in a firewall. So you cannot Zoom because I have confidential information on that server. So I was like, wait, why can't I get in? And then it showed me. You're inside. So that's why I had to exit, and you had a little bit of feedback. So welcome, everybody. I was listening to what Wanda said in legal structure. I'm going to give two aspects of my presentation. The first aspect is to tell you about, I can give you the simplest way to start a business and have a legal structure and get started right away. And it would cost you under $200. And you know, there are free things out there that you can use. I try to tell people in the beginning, when you're not really sure, free is the best way to go. That's just my thoughts, my opinions on that. Okay, a little bit about myself. Some of you met me. I had started this class, but life got in the way, and but I still have my idea, and hopefully I'll come back when it gets less hectic in my world. Okay, my name is Nadine Ullman. I'm a certified public accountant. I've been in the industry for 35 years plus. I'm licensed New York, Cali, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Florida. I have an MBA in finance. I have an MST in tax. I just like numbers. I just like it. It just makes sense to me. I often like to give this workshop because it's my way of giving back and paying it forward. A little bit about, I tell people the IRS, there's two people. The IRS has a rule. Its basic rule is this. You owe it money on legal and illegal sources from any source. Doesn't care. That's why a lot of people thought, oh, crypto, I'm going to hide my stuff. And the IRS is like, wait, what? Are you people serious? So you'll notice now when you're doing your personal tax return, it has a question on it. It says, did you trade, buy, sell any crypto? Yes or no? And people can not tell the truth, but the IRS already has that data out there. So, and it knows, and it will come for you if you don't tell it. They have a whole division called FinCEN that looks at economic crimes with, you know, the internet. So they know all the currencies that are out there. The biggest scam happened when a company, a young couple, I think they were from Florida. I don't know why everything happens in Florida, but it does. They were 32 years of age. They stole $4 billion and they arrested them. So, and, you know, and it's cryptocurrency, they Bitcoin, 4 billion in Bitcoin. So that was just something that happened maybe 2-3 months ago. So to tell you that people thought, oh, crypto, I'm hiding myself. You don't get to hide. Okay, so let's start with the easiest. I'll give you the easiest way to start a business. The IRS does not care if you use an EIN number or your social security number. So if you decide that you want to start a business today, overnight, baking goods, whatever it is, they don't really care. You can use your social security number, and you can, on your Schedule C as in Charlie, put the profits and losses for that business on that Schedule C. You can also say, okay, I'm a Schedule C, but I don't really like to have my social security number out there, right? And you can set up doing business as a DBA, and the IRS will issue you an EIN number so you can go and open a bank account. Okay, so that is, and that's free. You go online, the form is called an SS4, you fill out the information and you give the information. Now, if you said to the IRS, it's just you, then that's called a single member LLC, okay? If you say it's you and someone else, that's called a partnership, a 1065. And it used to be husband and wife, they made them do a partnership, okay? And all of these things have different dates. If you are just a single member LLC, you yourself, you're gonna, when will you do the business tax? You will do it at the same time that you do your 1040, and that deadline is April 15th. If you're a partnership, okay, it is March 15th. And the reason why I say these are very serious rules. And the IRS, once it issues you an EIN number, there is a form called a letter. It's called the letter, on the right-hand side of the letter. It says, you know, Internal Revenue Service, and I have an example of it I will share with you. And on it, it tells you what the IRS is expecting this business is. They're saying to you, okay, thank you, here's your EIN number. Keep this for your permanent records. You will need that letter to go into a bank and say, hey, I am so-and-so, I'm doing business as, and again, I'm a single member LLC, and the bank will give you a bank account just with that letter alone, okay? Now, if you want to make yourself more formal and you want to tell the state of Florida, okay, you go onto their SunBiz website and you register yourself, that will cost you between $138, $75, and $150, depending. and you go in and you say to the state, hey, this is who I am. I'm a single member LLC. And then you give them your information, okay? That will also, because a lot of banks, bankers, they want that Sunbiz, but if you have a fictitious name, either all that is registered at Sunbiz, they will use that to open your bank account. Okay, so, and then what I say to people is, remember, the bank account, whether it's in your personal name or it's in the business name, doing business as XYZ Tax, what you have to remember is they'll give you a debit card. That debit card, do not use it for anything else but business. Because if you start putting like, oh, I went to Publix and I did my grocery shopping and blah, blah, blah. If you get audited, I will tell you, any money coming in, the IRS says, okay, thank you very much. We recognize this as income. And anything going out that's not supposed to be business, they can disallow, they have the power to disallow every transaction. Okay. There's technically, if you hire someone like myself, a CPA, an enrolled agent, or a tax attorney, not any attorney, but a tax attorney, then we kind of argue and say, no, under safe harbor rules, the person has to have a minimum expense, but that's very expensive to have that happen to you. So just rule of thumb, if you open a bank account, just use that bank account. Even if it's in your personal name, just use it all for the business. Do not do, I'm doing my shopping, I'm going to Publix, I'm going to Costco. Don't do it. You can go to Costco. There's a legit reason. Like for example, myself, I bought a printer. Costco had a great deal. I bought a printer. But yeah, I bought a printer and then I got a receipt that says printer. It doesn't say food. Okay, it says the printer that I bought for my business. And you can keep that receipt because you need to have, that's another thing people don't understand. You must in a business keep your underlying receipts for the business. I see Lisa had a question. If you have two separate accounts and have already mixed funds, I didn't see the rest of the question. Hold on. Can I remedy that before tax time? Yes. What you need to do is, and here's what I'm going to explain. You don't have to go out. Like there's a lot of software out there. Intuit is a magnificent company. They do great advertising. They are the owners of QuickBooks. You do not even, IRS doesn't care about QuickBooks. It doesn't care. What it wants is an organized method to understand your taxes. Microsoft owns Excel. If you don't want to pay for any of this, Google Docs. Google Docs has a spreadsheet. And if you know how to use spreadsheets, you have one sheet that says in and the other sheet that says out. Okay. One of the best organized people that I saw does an in and out. And if you bank with a bank like a TD Bank, which I'm going to use in the example, they will even give you, okay, this is your ending balance on your bank account. And on the back, it gives you a space to reconcile. Okay. And then that's how you can do it. So what did I spend? Between 138 and 150 to go and register myself with the state. I don't have to do that because the IRS doesn't care. And in the state of Florida, if you're a single member LLC, there is no state income tax for that business. Okay. State of Florida, if you organize yourself as a as a corporation, a C Corp, then yes, you must not only file with the federal 1120, you must also file an F1120 with the state of Florida and pay tax on that money. Okay. So that's the thing. A partnership is a pass-through entity as long as all the partners are US or green card holders. If you have foreign partners, it becomes very expensive. You have to do forms called a 5471, 5472. Where is this? Where is that? And then on that partnership, you must pay the tax for the portion of profits that the foreign people have in the partnership. So be very careful of what you ask for. Okay, that is. And then an S Corp, it can only have US citizens or green card holders. Okay. And the number is, it can have 150 max, meaning a husband and wife. It says 75 or 150. Why? Because a husband and wife are, two people. So then that would count towards that number, if that makes sense. Okay. So those are the basic 4 entities that you can have. Single member, all that's you on your Schedule C. You can have a partnership, you can have an S, or you can have a C Corp. Now, here is how they get a lot of people. A lot of people on TikTok, on all this social media, they talk about S Corps. And people love them and they're like, oh, I'm going to be an S, I'm going to be an S. But let me just tell you this. The most important thing I want you to remember is this date. If you are an S corp, meaning that at the IRS, you've made an election to be an S, and that election is made on Form 2553, or you're a partnership, and the IRS says, hey, thank you for this EIN number. We're expecting a partnership return. That is a hard and fast deadline. Your stuff is due March 15th, meaning if you close December 31st, by March 15th, you need to be filing in your tax return. If you miss that deadline and you have not filed an extension, okay, then if you try to file, like March 15th pass and you decide on April 15th you're gonna pass, for every partner in that partnership, plus every month that passes, it's $198 per person per partner penalty. Okay, now in the first year, if you beg them by writing a letter and say, please abate this, they will most probably. But if you have a habit of being late, that's your business. The IRS doesn't care, you will pay that penalty. Okay, and let's say you didn't know you were supposed to file. Even if you have zero, you must file. Okay, a lot of people think, oh, I didn't make any money, blah, blah, blah. No, once you take out that EIN number, and that letter will tell you on it in the body of the letter. Most people don't read the body of the letter. It says, we have this expectation. We are looking for your tax return on this date. They'll even ask you when you sign up for an EIN number, are you going to have employees in the next 12 months? If you say yes, they're going to be looking for 941s and federal tax deposits. If you don't give that, they will come for you. Okay, so that is the structure. Now, I'm not going to give you legal advice. You have to decide. Oh, I see Lisa is shaking her head because you have that form that I'm talking about. I'm going to see if I can put up that form. Bear with me. If
About
I
4
cannot-
paragraphs, 5, 6 paragraphs in the back that I didn't read. So thank you for pointing that out. I will.
Right, in the center of the body. I don't know. Did you set up, what did you set yourself up? A single
An
member LLC?
EIN, just, yeah, EIN. I think, well, no, here's the funny thing, if I may, real quick. So in the beginning, and Atisha said something about this, like I started with my daughter as a partner. I don't
Mhm.
remember if I filed it like this, but before we even got going, and we haven't earned a whole lot of money, but she's got a baby and she's not working for me. So she's not my partner. We agreed she's not going to be a good partner.
Right.
But then we, like Wanda said it about when things are good before the money starts rolling. As soon as we got to talking about it, she says, oh, well, maybe I'll just be a silent partner and I want so much percentage. And we just shut all that down.
Correct.
So I'm curious now, if I submitted this as a partner with her and I want to change it, can I do that?
Yeah, you can, but you need to write the service and say, hey, I had
I'll
this.
review it. Yeah.
I messed up. She is not my partner. Because if you don't, and you didn't file timely, there'll be partnership penalties.
Okay, it does say at the bottom, I am that friend, Lisa Lorraine Tomei, general partner. So
Correct.
I'll write a letter. Thank
So
you.
you must say, okay, the IRS calls the person who's responsible, not only a general partner, but they call it a tax matters partner. That means you are going to sign. When I'm sending a bill, it's you. When I have a problem, it's you. Okay,
Call me.
so just know that.
Okay,
So
thank
you
you.
need to read that. So every time, like when I get a new client that's a business client, I say, okay, I need to see your EIN number. And they're like, oh, I know it. No, I want to see the letter. And you'll see on the right-hand side, Lisa, let me know. It says 575. You're going to see top right-hand corner. Do you see top right-hand corner? Look, and it'll say letter 575. See it? It's in there. So when I say to somebody, where's your 575 letter? They have no idea. I said, go look for the paper the IRS told you, and you could have gotten it online or gotten it in the mail. Most people opt to get it right then and there when they apply. So I tell people that is a document. You must have that as your permanent record, because the IRS will not issue you a second one. All they'll do is confirm your number. So if you lose that, it's your bad. Okay, it'll take you time to get information. They sometimes, and it's almost impossible now because the service is so backlogged to get them on the phone. I'm going to see if I cannot, let me see, let me minimize this 1 second and see if I cannot find the letter or a copy of what a letter looks like so I can share it on my screen.
So as Nadine does that, I will say from personal experience, my first year as a business owner, I made all those mistakes, and I got my, I have my business, it's 3 of us in a partnership. And so I got my letter of you now owe for each partner plus, and I had to do the abatement, like, please, 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 I made a mistake. Please help, please save me. and never messed up again like that again. But that was very terrifying to get that. I think, God, I feel like we owed over $1,000, so that was pretty intense.
Okay, I don't know if you can see how, let me try to maximize myself. Let's see. No, it hid me. I have the letter, so if I say share screen, will it show it like that?
Yep, you should be able to share your
Share
screen.
screen. And this is the letter. And I'm gonna say share.
There you
So
go.
here's an example of the letter. See, it says, I've blocked it out, but I put it an LLC and it's sole member. So it means a single member LLC. That means one person owns this LLC. And this is going to be on their Schedule C, okay? And then you'll see it says CP 575G over here. Do you see it in the, can you see it or no?
Yes.
I can see it.
Okay, you can see it, okay. And then they tell you, if you needed assistance, here's our 1-800 number. Good luck trying to get through to that number. And then in the center, the first paragraph will say, it'll repeat the EIN number. It also has the EIN number up here, but I've blocked it out just because I use this as an example. And then it tells you, a limited liability, you know, you can make your entity classification. Tell us what you are. If you're an LLC that wants to be treated as a corporation, you need to tell us. If you're making an S election, remember I tell that? Here's the form. You must file a 2553, a small business, okay? And then they tell you. So then once you say you want to be a small business, a 2553, the IRS must send you a letter saying, we allow you to be this. It's not you just doing it. You follow? So this is the thing. And you can take this to the bank and they will be able to use this to let you know. And then they tell you, this is the control number for your EIN number. And it's like a 4-digit code here. Okay, so most people don't read the body of the letter. If it were 1065, it would say in the body of the letter, you have opted to be a partnership. Your deadline is March 15th. And then they'll say, like, if this was in 2020, if you did this in 2022, they would say, we're looking for your partnership return starting March 15th, 2023. People don't read it and they don't know they have that deadline. They think, oh, April 15th. No. Okay. So please read this letter and keep this letter, because anybody who's working with you, any serious accountant, CPA, EA, or tax attorney is going to say, where's this letter so I know what you really are? Okay. So that's one of the things that I wanted to point out. If you're going up to government contracts, yeah, and Sunbiz too. Sunbiz can certify who you are and tells you. You pay, that's when you're doing your renewal fee. It's $138.75 if you're not getting any of the statuses, but then there's $15 for this and $15 for that. So that's why I said up to $150 that it could cost you on Sunbiz. And that's another thing. Sunbiz, everybody who establishes themselves on Sunbiz, particularly if you're an LLC, even if you're a single member, or if you are a partnership or a C Corp, you must pay this, you must renew that EIN number with the state. It's technically a tax. So if you are a single member LLC, it's $138.75. If you don't pay that by May 1st, it's $400 additional plus the $138.75. And they don't waive it. They don't care. That's your business. Okay. The state of Florida will not waive it for any reason. It's not their business for you to know that. You had to have known that before starting. Okay. The other thing that I say that's important, if you want to start a business tomorrow morning, besides the EIN number, the other thing you need to know is you need to be friends with the Florida Department of Revenue. Why? Because you have to figure out with the Florida Department of Revenue, in my business, am I required to pay sales tax? Let me give you a business that is required under a certain scenario. Let's take a mechanic shop. If a mechanic comes in and he changes your oil and you brought your own oil and you brought your own stuff to him, let's say that was that kind of shop, then he's only providing labor. He doesn't have to charge you sales tax. He just charges you for his labor. But if he gives you a part, like he changes the wipers or out of his stock, okay, he has to charge you sales tax for the entire service, labor plus the parts that he brought you. Let's talk about cooked food, right? you know that if you go into McDonald's and you buy a sandwich or a soda, they charge you sales tax because they prepared it in some fashion or form. Let's talk about Publix. Let's say when you go into Publix and you buy the bread, the honey mustard, cheese, and all the ingredients to make a sandwich, but you assemble the sandwich outside of Publix, you are not paying sales tax. But if Publix at the deli counter makes you a sandwich, you pay sales tax. So you need to know with the state of Florida, the type of business that you are in, do you have to pay its sales tax? Okay. And that's important because if you don't do it, what will happen is if wherever your business is or the location, the state will say, oh, okay, the type of business you are on average, I think that this is the amount of sales tax that you need to be paying. And they'll issue you a bill. And if you don't answer it, then they issue you a tax warrant. And then they say, pay me, because I gave you time to respond. So I get a lot of those all summer long. I've been dealing with that. I've been inundated with that issue. And they don't care how long it is. They want their sales tax because state of Florida does not charge quote unquote S corps and partnerships, but they do collect sales tax. Okay. So you need to know from the Florida Department of Revenue, do you, based on what you're going to be doing, have to pay sales tax? A lot of people used to sell stuff online, and with Hobby Lobby, I think the Supreme Court went to Supreme Court, and Amazon, remember, it never used to charge sales tax on certain things. But if the thing is domiciled in Florida, they don't care, pay me. So a lot of jurisdictions went in to fight for their sales tax. And that was something that was, the Supreme Court said, yeah, it's interstate commerce, pay the sales tax. Now, so the state of Florida, its main number, because the state of Florida also does, the Florida Department of Revenue also does child support. So don't get caught up in that. Listen carefully if you're just calling the main number. But the number to talk to the general people about sales tax administration or tax administration, their number is 850-488-6800. Those are the people that you need to know and be friends with to talk to them about what issues that you may have in your particular business. They are worth talking to, because if you don't do it and they have to come and assign somebody to collect that sales tax, it is expensive. It's expensive to hire people for us to go through your records. So, most people feel under pressure. They want to buy QuickBooks, and QuickBooks could be very expensive. Like, I know that they say it costs $70 a month, but every time into it raises their fees, and then it locks you out of your data. So you don't want to be beholden to somebody unless you know that. So a free thing is Google Docs. Google has spreadsheets. For now, it's free. I don't know what it'll be down the road, but for now, if you can use an Excel spreadsheet and you have a sheet that says my in is this, my out is that, then that's the way to go. Yeah, and yeah, I would agree that the phone call to the Florida Department of Revenue will save you lots of time and lots of energy. Better to ask, because it's like, for example, let's say you're learning to drive for the very first time and you're not familiar or you don't remember, you see a flashing yellow and it's a school zone. The police officer, when he pulls you over, he's gonna say, he's not gonna say, oh, I'm sorry. He's gonna say, you don't know that rule? He's gonna still write you that moving violation ticket, okay? So you're saying that I don't know the rules is not an excuse, okay? It's not, and they won't accept it. I'm gonna stop the share on that. Okay, so let's talk about, let me give you a more formal presentation that what I like to talk to people about what you need to think about. One of the things that now, like things that, when I gave this presentation in 2018, a lot of things have changed when I looked over my notes. Like, for example, we doing Zoom. Zoom has a business component now. Like, for example, if I pay for Zoom on a monthly basis, I think it costs me $20, no more than that. But that's a business write-off for me because I'm dealing with clients. We Zoom. You're not coming to my office face to face. So that's an expense that you can take off that people don't think about, because that is an expense of doing business. The IRS rule is anything that is reasonable and necessary. That's what the tax code says. Anything that's reasonable and necessary to run the business, they're going to allow it. Now, it can't be crazy. You know what I'm saying? It can't be crazy expenses that just don't make sense. Like, nobody says you have to wear a $4,000 Louis Vuitton suit to be on Zoom. You're not going to be able to deduct that. That's not a uniform. That's your business if you decide to do that. You know what I'm saying? not your business in the proper way, but that's your bad, or how, however you think. That's not gonna work. If I'm wearing a normal shirt like this, it's not a problem. I'm still able to talk to my clients. Did you follow what I'm saying? Okay, so basically what I used to say to people is that you have to know if you're going to lease an office space or not lease an office space. Okay, but you don't even have to do that anymore. You can work from the comfort of your house if you're able to work remotely. And can you take off that as a business expense? Yes, but you have to be aware that if you want to be considered a home office, the local laws cannot prohibit you from having an office. For example, in your condo association, if you live in one, or your townhouse, or your homeowner association, if it says you can't have a home office, then you can't write off the cost of a home office because it's prohibited against the local rules or jurisdiction that you live in. But during the pandemic, a lot of rules have been relaxed. You just need to check with your local government on that. That's what I tell people. For example, you'll see that I have a green screen behind me. The cost of having that, right? I think because of the world that we live in, I don't necessarily want to have everything about me identifiable. So I use a green screen. So that cost of purchasing that would be a deductible cost, okay? Anything that's reasonable and necessary to conduct the business. Okay, so definitely buying of office equipment. What I was gonna say about your office in your home, one of the elements is it must not have a bed in that, wherever that home office is, you cannot have a bed. I don't know why. Congress writes the rules. That's what they said. And that's how they kept up the code. So you cannot have a bed in that office space. Okay, so just be aware of that. Can the office be a boat? On a boat, yes. If the boat has 3 elements, you can deduct the expense. The 3 elements are, and I'm not a boater, so help me. It's the 3 elements. It means it has a kitchen, which is the galley, if I'm correct, if you're boaters. It has to have a head, which means it's a bathroom and shower area, and a berth, a place to sleep. So if it has those 3 elements, you can finance that boat and take mortgage interest. So because you have mortgage interest, you can deduct that as a home office if you have a space within that boat that allows you space to work. I don't write the rules, Congress, somebody lobbied for that one. Okay, so that's, yeah. So even a sleeper sofa, no, cannot have that. It cannot have a sleeping component. So that's the rules. I cannot tell you not to put it in there, but I'm just telling you what the law says, that you cannot have that. Okay, so office equipment, actually printers, all of those things can be written off, but keep the underlying receipt. It's not enough on your bank account to swipe it on a credit card. Scan receipts. You have no reason, because a lot of receipts are thermal, and then after a while that they will fade. So you need to keep the underlying receipt for that business. Does that make sense? Does everybody understand what I mean by that? Okay. So then I'm going to get to mileage in a second, because I need to explain that, because a lot of people don't understand the rules with mileage. But let's talk about phones. It used to be back in the day, landlines versus voice over IP. Most people use their mobile. Okay. If you're using your mobile for more than 51, this is the IRS's threshold, 51% of the time for business, then that can count as a business expense. So if you have the one cell phone, you can't say 100% of the cell phone, right? If it's only one cell phone that you have, you can't say that one cell phone is all business, because you're going to talk to people, right, on your one cell phone that's family and friends, okay, and not necessarily business. So what you've got to do is show that at least 51% or more is business related. Okay. All right. So people using voice over IP, there's telephones that look like telephones, but they're coming across the internet. Okay. The internet, yes, that is considered now just a normal business expense. Before, it was murky. I'm talking about 2004, 2005. It was a little bit murky, but now everybody, if you don't have the internet, you're just not in the world. Okay, let's talk about marketing research and market analysis. Those are things for, I hate to say that, research and development, because in 2017, under the Jobs Training Act, that was what we talk about as the different presidents. When Donald Trump was president, they rewrote rules in 2017. And R&D now for 2022 is now off the table. Maybe Congress will make a fix to that, and if there's enough lobby, but right now it sucks. It doesn't get, you used to be able to write up to $250,000 and blah, 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 blah. But right now, as it stands today, as I'm talking to you, no. Okay, let's talk about miles or business miles. Okay, first let's talk about what is a business mile. A business mile is not, if you have a virtual office that you've set up and you go and meet people there and you leave your house and you go to that virtual office, that is not a business expense. That is not called business mile. That is commuting. Okay, just like you commute to your job, that is considered commuting. Okay, so what is the mile would be if you have an office. Okay, once you go to the office to another client, that's where business mile starts. Does that make sense? And back to the other person. Starting July 1, 2022, it's 62.5 cents. Congress just passed that rule. It's 62.5 cents for every business mile. Okay. Now, people say, oh, I kept all my gas receipts and blah, 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 blah. All of that, that's nice. Okay. Because there's two methods. There's the actual and the mileage, but both methods require that you demonstrate the amount of miles that were business. Because the car doesn't know when you fill it up and it costs $62 or $70, whatever it costs you, depending on the vehicle that you drive. The car does not know if you went to Publix or if you went to see a client. It doesn't know that. So having the gas receipts are not enough. You must have a log. And then there are like, one of the apps that I know that used to have it used to be called Mile IQ. But I wrote down there's like 7 different ones that have it. There's Mile IQ, there's Stride, there's TripLog, Sherpa Share, and QuickBooks Self-Employed has, they're saying, has, I don't know of that, but those are the 7 most popular mileage apps. I'm familiar with Mile IQ because when it first came out for beta testing, they sent to all the CPAs that I know, they sent it to us for free. So we could, entice our clients to use it. I used it for a year and I thought it was it works like if you want Tinder, it's the Tinder of Mile app. If you swipe to the right, if it's business, swipe to the left, it's not. So kind of if you like it, yes. And if you don't like it, to the other side. Does that make sense? So I found it easy to use. And then in the end, you could print down an Excel type log and it told you what the total business miles were as opposed to your regular, your personal miles. And then that gave you a log because most people don't remember, okay? You'll notice that another way that the IRS checks on your vehicle is when you take your car into service, okay, to get an oil change, blah, blah. Notice Jiffy Lube or the dealer, they write down the miles. So basically, if you've never kept a mileage log, the IRS would ask you, okay, what's the miles at the beginning of the year and at the end? And then they would extrapolate if what you were saying was truly making sense or not. Yeah, so I see somebody says driving from my legitimate home office to a client's house, is that allowed? Not commuting. For example, where you're saying your legitimate home is your home office. So you're not going to leave every day to go to that same client, correct? That's what I'm assuming. So if you today, like let's say you have a schedule. On Monday, I go to see client TD Bank, okay? So you leave your house and you drive 5 miles to TD Bank. That's a legitimate business expense. What I'm saying to you is if you had a office other than at your house, I'll give you an example, because people used to do that before the pandemic. People used to not see people by Zoom or from home. They would mostly go to an office location, right? An office park. So I'm saying, even if you're self-employed, from your house to that office park or that virtual, like WeWorks, you know what I'm saying? You had a WeWorks location. That the distance between that and your home is not considered business. That's considered commuting. Does it make sense? Is that clear?
From like home to the client, and I'm logging that. I've been doing pretty good.
That's
logging that.
business.
And then if
That's
I go
business.
from that client to another client, I'm logging the distance from there to there.
Right, that's
And
business.
then whatever it is to get me back home, because some of
That
them
is
I do a round
business.
trip. Okay,
Right.
thank you.
But let's say in
But not the
between,
public stop in between, right?
correct, not the public stop. I was about to say that, yes. You cannot, you have to deduct that. So, and then you'll even see that your cars now are smart enough. Like you get in the car and you start doing a pattern. Like, okay, I drive a Volkswagen, and all of a sudden, like I'll get in the car and it's Thursday, and it assumes that it knows where I'm going. Okay. And I'm like, wait, whoa, this is scary. So just like the car does it, my phone does it too. So that AI technology is really out there. So hold on, and I'll just get you. What I'm going to say is about deductions. We used to be able to deduct prior to the Trump administration making plans. The plans became effective. The tax code changed in 2018. They wrote the law in 17, but they delayed it until 18. So you used to be able to deduct things like, for example, meals and entertainment, and what not meals so much. Like, for example, if I take somebody out to lunch as a business, I'm allowed to deduct only 50% of the cost of that. Not the whole thing, just 50%. Okay. And then I have to have a valid business purpose. I took XYZ client to lunch, and we was a business lunch or whatever, and then whatever that cost is, and let's say it cost $100, I can only deduct in the business $50. Okay, so be aware of that. But prior to 2018, you used to be able to take people out to, I don't know, if you're golfing, okay, or you could take somebody out for golfing, or you could take them out to a Heat game, or you could take them out to, you could be a Heat season holder, and you could say that's a business expense. Nah, that's all gone now. That is not deductible. Okay, so remember, you've got to watch that. You cannot do this elaborate, and people used to get away with it, but that's no longer there. I see somebody says, I use Everlands for the type of stuff. It tracks mileage and business expense. Yeah, that's good. What about daily coffee? Who is drinking the coffee? Are you giving that to the client and yourself, or are you just going to Starbucks? If you're going to Starbucks for you, that's not business, that's personal. Yeah, I get a lot of that. Yeah, so if you're doing daily coffee, and then a lot of people, they'll buy themselves lunch. Okay, think about it. When you were in corporate America and you were at a job and you bought yourself lunch, did the job pay for it? No. So just like that, the business is not paying for you to eat. That's personal. That's not a business expense. So I see somebody send me a ha-ha face. Okay, but that's true. Think about it. I tell people, try to think about it as when you were working in the world under somebody, okay? Here's another thing you have to bear in mind. When you own your own business, and here's my rule of thumb, I say to people, use 30%. If you make $1,000, know that $700 is legitimately yours to spend, and $300, 30%, right? 30% of 1,000 is 300, right? Should go in as estimated tax, because you do not want sticker shock at the end, because whatever that profit number is at the end, you're going to be subject to 15.3% for unemployment. Self-employment tax. Okay. So I say to people, just use it as a guide. The IRS doesn't care if you pay it every week. If you go up, because people are able to do things when it's in small increments. So if I know, okay, for the month, I've made $1,000 net, that's going to be mine. Well, the 1,000 is not really yours. 700 is yours, and send 300 in. And I'm talking about people who are self-employed single member, because self-employed single member means that you are a sole entrepreneur. Okay. Another thing is, I tell people, hire your kids. It's a discussion. It's a little bit complicated. You have to know what you're doing, but it can be worth it. Yes, you can create wealth with it, but that's a little bit complicated and stuff for today. I'm just going to read down. Yeah, do not spend your tax money. Figure it out before. And it should be no surprise. You should not be on January, when December 31st closes, you need to know what your numbers are. You're doing every month, and in and out, it's going to be of no surprise. I'm going to give you an example, and I'm going to try to share this screen. Let me go 1 second. Let me put up. I gave a simple example of TD Bank. And the reason why I say TD Bank, not because I don't have anything to do with TD Bank, but they do simple bank statements. And let me see if I can share the screen now. Hold on. Okay, let's say share screen. Is it there? Yeah. Okay, and share. Okay, here's an example of TD Bank. I blacked out everything that has to do with this client, but here's a client. At the beginning of the month, he had $6,045.71. He made payments of this, there was a service charge of this, so his ending balance is this. Okay, but that's what the bank has, correct? You agree, right? It's possible that on the 31st of May, this is a May bank statement, okay? It's possible on May 31st, I have a night deposit, like I have a bag, and I could have gone and dropped whatever cash or whatever somebody paid me into their night deposit box. You agree, right? So if I did that on May 31st, right, after business hours, that's still May money. Do we agree? Okay, so, and how would I be able to show what is my bank? Okay, so what I like about TD Bank is on the back. You see this? You see how they said this is your ending number, which was this number here, right? This is what you started with. This is what went out. This is my service fee. So this is your ending balance according to them, right? You agree? But it's possible on the 31st, I went and made a deposit. So here I would write in, oh yeah, deposit this amount. So it says deposit's not on the statement. Okay, so I would put it in here and then I would put whatever that amount is. And then withdrawals, it's possible on the 31st, right? I go and either use an ATM or that's not showing up, right? Because it's after banking hours, right? Or I wrote a check. People still write checks. I wrote a check and the check is not showing. So is my bank balance really this number? Okay. And what I tell people is you can get a bank, TD Bank happens to be one of them, on the back of every one of their statements, they give you this formula on how to calculate. But this is nothing more than an Excel spreadsheet, my in and my out, and that's going to tell me where I stand. Does that make sense? So I did a little sample to show you. I said, I wrote 2 checks that are not here because there's no checks showing, right? These are electronic payments. You don't see any checks. You agree? So I did a little example. I said, this is it. On the 31st, I took my little bank bag. I went to the night deposit. I dropped in $1,800, right? It's not reflected on the bank. So it's what a bank reconciliation is. You're going from the bank to my books to say, this is my true number. And if you know what your true number is, you're not going to bounce checks. You don't know how many times people they've done all year and they don't know what their position is. They can't see if they have a profit or loss. Do you know what I'm saying? Because they don't balance. Okay, so let me lower this a second and I'm going to screen share with you a bank rec. Let me see if I can bear with me here. I'm going to stop this screen share and screen share again. And where's the TD Bank? Reconciled. Hold on, let me see. It doesn't show it here, hold on. Let me lower this. Is it?
I think we just saw it, Nadine. It had written on with red writing.
Okay, it did, yeah, the red writing,
Was
that's
that
what I was
one?
trying to show you. Okay, so let me try to go back. Screen share. Okay, and share. Okay, here. So what I said on 5/31, which was this year, that was what was that? May 31st was a Tuesday. Remember, the 30th was a holiday. Okay, it's possible I could have dropped the money in the bank on the 30th and they didn't count it, right? So I said, okay, the bank is showing this, but I know I deposited $1,800 and that gave me this subtotal. And then I withdrew, I had a check for $528 for 100 and $529 for 150. So here's the withdrawals. So my true bank balance is $7,161.22. You need to balance. You need to understand your numbers, okay? And if you even if your bank doesn't do this, if you use a Google Docs spreadsheet, 1 page is in, 1 page is out, you can, or you can, like a checkbook, this was the balance. Don't forget to write down every ATM transaction you do, okay? And that way you won't. A lot of younger people, the millennial crowd, I would say, what they do is they keep keep using that ATM card and they don't get it. The bank doesn't care if you bounce or you withdraw, overdraft, because that's $35 every time you overdraft. So this is the simple way. You know, before QuickBooks tried to make you think you could be an accountant, just write it down, you know, use an Excel. So, okay, let me stop the screen share. And I don't know if anybody has any questions or anything that you want me to go over. There's something called, oh, I know what I didn't say. There's something called bonus depreciation. It's called section 179. So that means, for example, I don't know the exact amount, but you used to be able to write, back in the old days, you used to write up to 25,000, but then it went up to something crazy like 250, and then it went to $1 million. And I don't know what it's back now. I didn't look before I did this presentation. But what I tell people is, if you buy equipment that's worth $5,000 or more, example, but it depends on your size of your business also, okay? But $5,000 is usually to a startup significant. I say to yourself, if you didn't make any money this year, why would you write off the whole 5,000 to get a more negative number? That doesn't make sense. Save that 5,000 and divide it over 5 years of the value of that, you know, equipment, okay? So that this year you're taking 1,000. The next year, if you have a profit, let's say your profit was 9, if you get to take off 1,000 in depreciation expense, right? So you're gonna have to pay tax on what? On 9,000 instead of having to pay it on 10. But if you use the whole thing and took that 179 election, all of the depreciation that you could take on it, if you took it all in that 1 year, then you're not benefiting. You're getting more negative, of which you're not paying taxes on a negative number. They don't tax you on negative numbers. Okay, so those are the things I say, work with people who can help you. One other thing I'd like to point out, and then I'll take Q&As from you guys. Employees. If you decide to have employees and you started your business by using your social security number, you must immediately go back to the IRS and say, I need an EIN number because I hired an employee, okay? Because you are responsible if that employee, other than your child or other than family, so there's special rules for them, is just a regular person. Over, let's say it's your daughter over the age of 18, you have to withhold federal tax deposits. You must withhold Social Security. You must withhold their Medicare, and you must match them Social Security and Medicare. You cannot just tell somebody they're a contractor, because there's very, very, very specific rules. If you muck that up, the penalty for that is 3 times the tax. So if you owed 1,000, it will now be $3,000. Okay, so that is not an area. Please, please, please reach out to somebody like myself. I'm always happy to help small business owners, but anybody who does that you trust, please use a credentialed person. Stop with this stuff. Oh, my friend's friend, or they and them, they said. You need somebody that you can hold accountable, okay? For example, if you had a problem with your plumbing, you're not gonna go to the electrician and he's gonna say, oh, well, I think it's this. No, use the professionals. Use somebody who's either an EA, an enrolled agent, a CPA, or a tax attorney, because if you muck this area up, trust fund penalties has no forgiveness. You will become personally liable. You cannot bankrupt out of it. It's like a student loan, it's like child support, okay? If you don't do federal tax withholdings on employees, and if you mark somebody as a contractor that should not be, the state of Florida will be on top of you as well. Okay, so just know that that's really, really important. Those are the areas that we see people mess up a lot in. It's good for us, but not so good for you. All right, so now I'll just open it up for any questions anybody might have.
This has been awesome so far. I know we've been asking questions along the way. Anyone has a question that hasn't yet to been asked?
I have a quick question. If you're traveling for business and that insurance that they ask you when you get your ticket, would that also be deductible?
Yes, that's the total price of the ticket, yes. But it has to be business purpose. Like, for example, I had somebody come to me and they were audited. They went to somebody's wedding, but they were a mortgage person. And they said, oh, well, at the wedding, they talked about mortgage. The IRS agent looked at me and said, Ms. Ullman, you got to be kidding me. It's a no. So it can't be, you know what I'm saying? It has to be true business. I'm not saying that's what you would do, but I'm just telling you from experience, people have tried some foolery and the service is like, that's a no. Yeah, so it has to be true business purpose. You have to show that, okay, I flew to Vegas to do this presentation, blah, blah, blah. You know what I'm saying? But then I stayed a few days for vacation. So a part of like, maybe the hotel won't be, but the coming and going of that ticket, it should be.
One more question.
Sure.
Okay, so if I'm leaving to go to a client that's in Las Vegas, with it, can I deduct the mileage from here, from my home to the airport? Would that be?
Yes, yes. Because that's transportation to, you know what I'm saying? Yes, that would be deductible, yes. And if you parked your car at the airport, which I'd not advise, but yes, that too is deductible, yes. That's all the questions?
I have a quick one. Like
Sure.
right now, I've been operating all year, but totally at a loss. I mean, so any income I do have coming in is going toward my living expenses, my personal, you know, my business and my personal expenses. So
Okay,
just kind of hang
However-
in there for this year. I mean, wait until, because yeah, I'm not.
no,
saving.
even if, whatever money, this is the hard part for people, whatever money that has come in, and you're using it for business expenses, like I said, use this as a rule of thumb. You got $1,000 in from a client. Even though if you use the entire $1,000 for your personal to pay whatever, you owe the government $300 right there. Remember, because my rule of it's 70% is yours and 30% is theirs. You know what I'm saying? Because you're not going to be able to justify that personal aspect. If you're, you know what I'm saying? So that's why I say don't commingle funds. Open a bank account strictly for the business. It's hard. It's hard, but you have to have that self-discipline.
Thank you.
So you have to go back and say, okay, what wasn't really business? You have to separate it. Because if you're audited, you're not going to want to, because once you get on the radar, they will be back. And then they'll go back and look, for example, as long as you've been doing this, they'll be, oh, okay. And, you know, there is no statute of limitation on fraud. If you're doing a crime, and I'm not saying everybody here is doing crime, but if you're doing something and they tag you for a year, they go back and they look and they can go back 3 and they're like, okay, this was happening the past 3 years. Okay, let's go back 3 more to see what this person was doing. So there's no limit. People say, oh, you know, after 3 years, you're free. Not true. So I've seen it happen. So I would say you've got to have, this is why being your business owner, there is the business. That's why the business has its own EIN number, which is a 9-digit number, just like your social security number. It's 2 plus 7. Yours is 3 and then 2 and then 4, still 9 digits. And it's separate. The government doesn't care. If you took what's called withdrawals, okay, that's your business. That's not business. That's your personal. You still owe me. You have to back out those withdrawals and figure out what the profit number is.
So before we, oh gosh, we are out of time. I'm asking the same question I asked the speaker before. And so for our entrepreneurs that are starting out or growing their business, what would you say is kind of their hit list? What are the top things top 3 or 4 things they need to do to make sure they're kind of starting their businesses off accounting wise on the right foot?
Okay, the number one thing is if you decide not to use your social security and you get an EIN number, that 575 letter that we showed you at the beginning, you must keep that. Number 2 is you must use some kind of mechanism, whether it's a notebook or because of automation, a Google Docs sheet, okay, because that is free. You keep your in and your out in it. And then you have a bank account. The number one thing, that bank account should be business only. Okay, I can tell you, I have my business, plus I own an investment property. Everything is separate. My Chase account is all my investment property. It's all that goes in there. My business is at Bank of America. That's what goes there. My personal is Wells Fargo. I just have 3 different buckets and I make it work. So if I take money out of Bank of America and put it into Wells Fargo, know that I've taken a distribution that I have to pay tax on. You just have to be disciplined.
death by accounting. That's gonna be me. I'm sorry.
I'm trying to give you the easiest version of it, because yeah, I mean, to hire somebody is expensive. People will tell you whatever, but you have to know there's a certain amount, because a lot of people who become wealthy get robbed because they don't understand their numbers. They don't understand what's high season, not high season. They don't understand what sales are or not sales. You have to know a little bit about your business. You don't have to know everything, but you have to have a little bit. So those are the three things. And then the last but not least, call the state of Florida. Do I on this business have to pay you sales tax? Have that conversation.
Amongst other conversation, I find if you're not calling like, I don't know, January to April, the state of Florida, IRS, there are a lot of people that are available to help. And we tend to fear them, and you fear them when you've messed up or you haven't done it. But during like these times, they can give you some true guidance to kind of avoid some of those costly mistakes. So definitely pick up the phone and really get those resources that you need.
Right, they put on workshops. The IRS hasn't had an opportunity, but for the state of Florida, they constantly put on workshops about sales tax. Because a lot of people don't understand. I give the example of a mechanic. If he's just doing his labor alone, no sales tax. But if it has any kind of parts in it, okay, or any of his inventory, the whole job is sales tax. Yeah, you just have to know that.
There was one time where I called the Department of Revenue and I was like terrified to call them. And they sat there with me, no joke, for like an hour going through each question. I was like, I can't find this document. And they were like, oh, don't worry, we'll just wait on the phone. They would so much rather be a help beforehand.
Right. You don't want their enforcement unit. You don't. So talk to them. It's, you know, they don't care if you call several times a day, but just remember this: if you set up you establish an entity on their website and you give it email, they will send you reminders from the beginning of the year. Pay us this, pay us this, pay us this, or your renewal. It's a tax, which is deductible as a business expense. But if you get to May 1st, May 2nd comes and you haven't paid it, you now owe $400 plus whatever the fee was before. No ands, ifs, or buts. They don't abate any penalty. And if you want your name, if they dissolve it and you want that particular name back, you're going to pay them for all the years, all the fees plus the years. And people have done it. A guy did it for 12 years back. He wanted that company name. They hold on to it.
All righty. Well, I think with that, Nadine has given us a lot to think about, and I don't want you guys to feel overwhelmed. We have this recording to come back to, and it's the small things. A lot of the big scary things about dealing with the IRS or the government is really because we don't pay attention to the little things, right? And so pay attention to the letters, reading, calling, contacting, asking questions. They save us a lot in the long run, and that's really
Right.
the biggest takeaway is kind of leveraging all your resources. And no one's expecting you to be a CPA or have all the answers, but leveraging the resources at your disposal to make sure your business is in good standing as you grow is what we really want you guys to really just kind of have as that takeaway. So thank you again, Nadine, for
You're welcome.
really helping us kind of really think through these different pieces as some of us are launching or redefining and growing our businesses. So with that being said, we are almost ready to wrap up. So Nadine, you can hop off. We're just giving some parting words as we wrap up some things here. And everybody else, we have
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, Nadine. Thank you so
Bye.
much. So I know it was a lot. How y'all feeling? Y'all still good? All right. We do sometimes these are the conversations we don't like to have, the legal, the accounting, but like I've seen entire businesses shut down because they had a good product, they had a good model, but they missed steps in these areas. And so even though this isn't part of design thinking or business model canvas, these are conversations I don't think we have enough on in these spaces, especially for us, some of us starting out that like can be really costly. And so we always want to make sure that we're kind of bringing these things. And I've heard questions from people over the years in different cohorts. And so this is one of the things we've incorporated as based on that feedback. So with that being said, we have created a Calendly link. Katie, do you have that link I sent you earlier? I'm on a different machine, or maybe I can pull it up. Oh yeah, here we go. So we have a link that we want you to leverage to book your sessions with us. And so we adjusted the dates and times according to what you guys mentioned. Go ahead and put it in there if you have access to it, Katie. I'm moving slow and finding it. It should be the same link. And we don't want you guys to, leave here and forget, and then next week be like, oh, I didn't book that session. So I know we're a little over time. I just want you guys to go ahead and book that your sessions with us, so we can make sure you guys are good in navigating your wireframes and moving on and closing things out and getting to the next level. So Katie put the link in the chat. If you can click on that and go ahead and book your times before we hop off, that way we know that we got you guys covered. And if for whatever reason, the one time you were available is not available, let us know and we can figure out how to accommodate you. But this is kind of, our last time of really kind of having these one-on-ones before we do any deep design work. And if we kind of pass you guys off, or we won't let you get passed off to the next level if we don't really have a grasp of what you're doing. And then you kind of go to the end of the pack. And so if you can do that now, that would be super helpful, so we can accommodate you guys with our schedules. Let me know if you have any issues.
I'm having an issue, Wanda. It's giving me it's going to my business website Calendly when I click on that. So when I'm trying to log in, it goes to my business website Calendly.
You shouldn't have to log in. You should be able just to click on that link. Is it asking you to log in?
Yes, it is. It's asking me to log in when I secure the date. It's asking me to log in. And when I use, because my email address is attached to it, it's actually going to my calendar for my business.
Okay, let me see. We'll do this. Tell me what date and time you want, and I can just put you in there. And that's probably the fastest way around it.
10:30 on Friday.
You said 10:30?
Yes, ma'am.
Looks like that is actually gone.
Okay. What time you have available?
It's 11, 12:30, 1, 3, 3:30, and beyond.
12:30. Fine.
You said 12:30 on Friday?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else having an issue?
I want to say I'm feeling less worried about my wireframe now and more worried about my accounting.
No, no worries. We're at a learning stage. so
But it
this
was
is all
good,
about
right? I
the
have
learning.
a page of notes and I just knew this was, and Katie knows, I've talked a little, like I'm in Tisha, I think I mentioned that, like it's a lot. So I do appreciate that you've added these few pieces. The legal is interesting to me, but the accounting and the knowing my numbers is so intimidating. So it was really nice to have some guidelines and some of the things I highlighted that I
And
need to do.
Lisa, you're really gonna be able to, for your business, when you're thinking about your wireframes, think about ways in which you can make, you're delivering those services less time. Like if you're spending time booking and doing all the scheduling, that takes time away from what you're charging. I mean, that ends up not being as profitable for you. So try to think about it as a profit equation.
And you had said before, automate as much as I can automate. I like that. Thank you.
As long as your users, are able to use it. I mean, that's important for, I think, your group of people.
Alrighty, how are we doing? Is everybody able to schedule? Let me see what we got going on here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, I think that's everyone that's here. Awesome, you guys are awesome. Thank you so much for getting that done so efficiently. I truly appreciate you guys. So with that being said, you all have a wonderful evening, and I'll be talking to some of you guys tomorrow, if not before the end of the week.
Bye. Thank you.
All right, good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye.